Hello, everybody. My name is Mitch Spinell, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different here. I'm going to be naming every single winner of the World Series in Major League Baseball on a game played on the website Sporcle. So if you've never been to Sporcle's website before, basically you just play a quiz here where you fill in all the answers you possibly can before the timer goes out. Actually, let me just adjust that here. So 15 minutes on the clock. I'm going to be naming every single winner of the World Series and maybe sharing some tidbits alongside you guys. Be sure to comment below how many teams you think I'll get correctly, whether you think I'll get them all or not. Let's go. So the first winner of the World Series was the Boston Red Sox, but I don't know if they're going to let me type in Red Sox. They were known as the Americans back then, and here evidently they do. They won it against the Pittsburgh Pirates 5-3, I believe. 1904, there was no World Series that year, so the New York Giants in 1905 beat the Philadelphia Athletics in the series. In 1906, we had an all-Chicago World Series, one of 3 times that one city hosted a World Series outside of all the different combinations of New York, the Giants, Yankees, and Brooklyn. I'll get to the other one here very shortly. So this one was the White Sox against the Chicago Cubs. Now, the next 2 years, the Cubs ended up taking the World Series, I believe both times over the American League champion Detroit Tigers. And then in 1909, it was not the Cubs, but the Pirates that ended up beating the Tigers in that World Series. The Cubs got back into the World Series in 1910, where they would lose to Connie Mack's Philadelphia Athletics. In 1911, I believe the A's won it that year as well, if I'm not mistaken, unless I get this one wrong. I got this one right, actually. So there you go. The next year was the Boston Red Sox, and one of the best World Series you can read about, at least from the first couple of years of when the World Series first started happening. Red Sox over the Giants, heck of a series. Definitely check that one out. 1913, this is a little bit tough. I want to say it was the $100,000 infield for the A's, and I got it right. So the next year, it's Boston, but not the one you're thinking of. This was the Miracle Braves team that ended up being so many games far back in last place in the National League about the halfway point of the year. Then they came back, won the World Series against the A's, and the A's ended up breaking apart due to Connie Mack's financial decisions. 1915, I want to say this was Red Sox again. And 1916, I know was Red Sox again. I believe that was one of the ones that was one of the earliest World Series start times because of World War I, then known as the Great War. 1917 was the White Sox. 1918 was the Red Sox, obviously. Curse of the Bambino, last time before 2004 that the Red Sox won the title. So we're about 2 minutes into this, I believe, no, 3 minutes rather. 1919, that was the Cincinnati Reds, the Black Sox scandal World Series. Everybody got banned from that. Shoeless Joe Jackson should be in the Hall of Fame, though. 1920, the Cleveland Indians beating the Brooklyn Dodgers of that time. 1921 was the first of 3 straight World Series that the Giants beat the Yankees, with the Yankees winning their first title against any team in general in 1923. The Giants would get back to the World Series in 1924, but it was the Washington Senators that ended up beating them, Walter Johnson's first and only World Series title. The Senators would get back to the World Series, though, in 1925, when it would be the Pirates beating them in 7 games. In 1926, we had the St. Louis Cardinals winning their first ever World Series title. Grover Cleveland Alexander came in, struck out Tony Lazzeri. Babe Ruth got caught stealing to end the series. The rest is history. 1927, we had the New York Yankees, the Murderers Row, one of the greatest teams ever assembled, beating I believe it was the Pirates that year, because in 1928, they ended up beating, I almost wrote Cardinals there for that answer. That was not right. It was the Yankees over the Cardinals, 1929, I want to say it was the A's over the Cubs again. It was. And then 1930, the Athletics won again. And then in 1931, I think the Cardinals bested them in the series, and they did. 1932, also one of the best series ever, despite it being a sweep. The Yankees over the Cubs. Obviously, Babe Ruth calling his shot. Lou Gehrig was also great in that World Series too. 1933 is a little bit tougher for me right now because I feel like it was... Gosh, if it wasn't the Yankees, it definitely wasn't the Senators because the Giants won around this time too. It could have also been the Cardinals. So I want to see my first guess, and I'm waging my bets here. Was it the Giants this year? It was. Okay, so 1933 was the Giants. 1934, it's either the Giants or the Cardinals again. This is really tough here. I want to say I'm going to go with Cardinals just to be safe, and it is. There you go. 1935 was the Detroit Tigers over the Chicago Cubs. In 36, get ready for this, folks. Yankees, 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 and Yankees. 4 straight World Series. First time that ever happened, but it would not be the last. 1940, for whatever reason, I knew this one. The Reds beating the Tigers in that World Series. Yankees and Dodgers, the first year they ever played against each other was in 1941. I know that. 1942, the Cardinals beat the Yankees. And keep in mind, we're in the World War II era of this time, which led to not this one here. This was the Yankees beating the Cardinals or whatever team it was. But in 1944, the Cardinals faced off against the St. Louis Browns in the World Series. This is the, what would it be, the third and last time, I guess, considering the other New York series. Basically the second time a city other than New York hosted an entire World Series. You had the Cubs and White Sox in 1906. You had all the New York ones. And then that one right there, two St. Louis teams facing off in the World Series. So we're up to 1944. I almost forgot to write in my answer there. 1945, we had the Tigers beating the Cubs again, 10 years after they previously beat them. 1946 was the Cardinals against the Red Sox. Johnny Pesky hesitated with a throw. Slaughter scored. They won the title. 1947 was the Yankees over the Dodgers. 48, that was the Cleveland Indians, their last World Series win to date against the Boston Braves. 1949, here we go. Yankees. Gosh, I don't know what happened there. Yankees and the Yankees. I want to say 49 was the Dodgers. 50 was the Phillies. 51 was the Giants that they beat. 52 and 53 were the Dodgers. 54 was the Giants against the Cleveland Indians, who won 111 games that year. We're about almost halfway done, so that's good. We're on a good track here. 1955, the Brooklyn Dodgers finally broke through, won the World Series in 7 games. Johnny Padres had the World Series MVP performance. 1956 was the year that Don Larson threw the perfect game in the World Series. The Yankees beat the Dodgers in that one. In 1957, the Milwaukee Braves won their first title and only title in Milwaukee against the Yankees in 7 games. Lou Burdett, Hank Aaron, young Hank Aaron, actually. And then 1958, the Yankees got revenge, beating the Braves in that World Series. 1959, the first time that the Dodgers were in the World Series as a team in Los Angeles, and they beat the Chicago White Sox. I almost misspelled Dodgers there, so there you go. 1960, it was the Pittsburgh Pirates. Bill Mazeroski's home run won the World Series against the Yankees. 61 and 62 were both the Yankees back-to-back. That was against the, I want to say it was the Reds and then the Giants in that World Series. Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris, the whole deal. 1963 was the Dodgers. This is when we're getting into like the prime of Sandy Koufax. Don Drysdale was also a member of these teams. 1964, the Cardinals won the World Series, their first of 2 with Bob Gibson as their star pitcher. 1965 was the Dodgers against the Minnesota Twins, who had moved from Washington a few years earlier. 1966 was the Baltimore Orioles, who moved from St. Louis. They were the Browns. They moved to Baltimore, became the Orioles in the 50s, and then they became eventually here a very solid team for the next couple of years. 1967 was the Cardinals against the Red Sox. Red Sox Cardinals is a very prominent World Series matchup over the century plus of baseball. 1968 was the Tigers against the Cardinals. 1969 was the amazing Mets. 7 years after they lost 120 games, they ended up beating the Baltimore Orioles, the heavily favored Orioles, in the World Series. The O's, however, would come back in 1970, beat the Cincinnati Reds after Frank Robinson was traded from Cincinnati to Baltimore. Brooks Robinson also on that team as well. Jim Palmer, Earl Weaver, just a whole bunch of great players and coaches. 1971 was the Pirates over the Orioles. That was not the last time the two would face off in the World Series in that decade. 1972, we had another Athletics dynasty here, as I mistype it. Athletics, A's, and A's. They beat the the Reds the first year, the Mets the second year, and the Dodgers the third year. 1975, the Reds would come back. The big red machine beat the Red Sox in 7 games despite Carlton Fisk's home run. And 76, sweep the Yankees. The Yankees would come back and win in 77 and 78. Reggie Jackson, both times over the Dodgers. In 1979, we had another Pirates and Orioles matchup in which the Pirates defeated the O's in 7 games. Now we get into the 80s. This is the first ever World Series title for the Philadelphia Phillies. They beat the Kansas City Royals. Tug McGraw came in and closed out the final game. Long-time suffering fan base, first World Series title ever. 1981, in the midst of Fernando Mania, the Dodgers beat the Yankees in that World Series. 1982 was the Cardinals. They beat the first-time World Series participating Milwaukee Brewers. The expansion, no, not the expansion team. Did they come over from Seattle? I think they did. They were the Seattle Pilots before, which I have a jacket of that in my closet. I'll show you sometime. 1983 was the last World Series to date for Baltimore. They beat Philadelphia. 1984, another team that hasn't won the World Series since, the Detroit Tigers, who beat the San Diego Padres in the series. 1985, Kansas City Royals in the I-70 World Series against St. Louis. 1986, the Bill Buckner series, one of the greatest World Series ever. Mets over the Red Sox. Unbelievable. 1987, the Twins up against the Cardinals. The Twins won it in 7 games, I believe. In 1988, the Dodgers won on the Kirk Gibson home run in Game 1. They ended up gentlemen sweeping the Athletics. In 1989, that was the Earthquake World Series out on the West Coast, and the A's swept the Giants. 1990, we had the Reds sweeping the Athletics, surprisingly. To date, that is Cincinnati's last World Series title. Also a last World Series title, the Twins. Did I spell Minnesota right? Yes, I did. The Twins have not won a World Series since 1991, another one of the greatest World Series ever over the Braves. I feel like I have to pick up the pace here a little bit. The Toronto Blue Jays would win the next World Series title over the Atlanta Braves, the first time a World Series was won outside the continental United States. 1993, the Blue Jays would repeat. Joe Carter hit the World Series winning home run, beating the Phillies. 1994, there was no World Series because of the strike, but in 95, it would come back and have a rematch between the Braves and the Indians. The Braves won that World Series. 96, the Yankees would upstage the Braves in 6 games. This one hurts to type. The Florida Marlins up against the Cleveland Indians that year. 98 was the Yankees, one of the best teams to ever step on a field. 111, 14 wins, 11 wins? I don't even remember. 125 wins in total. I do remember that for some reason. And they won the World Series the next year against the Braves. The previous year was against San Diego. 2000, we had the Subway Series, last to date between the Mets and the Yankees. Diamondbacks would win the next year, stopping the streak for the Yankees in its tracks. And I misspelled Diamondbacks here. There we go. 2002 was the first time 2 wildcard teams ever played in the World Series between the Giants and the Angels would win. 2003, the Marlins beat the Yankees in the World Series. That was a great year for a number of teams. 2004, the curse is broken. The Red Sox sweep the Cardinals. 2005, another team with a long drought won the World Series, also wearing socks, the White Sox over the Astros. 2006, we had the Cardinals over the Tigers. I'm going to speed run through a couple of these. The Red Sox won in 2007 over the Colorado Rockies. 2008, we had the Phillies up against the Tampa Bay Rays. There were a lot of weird teams in the World Series in the 2000s. Then we have 2 powerhouse teams in 2009, the Yankees beating the Phillies that year. That was a great one, a very formative World Series for me. 2010, we had the Giants over the Texas Rangers. In 2011, we had the Cardinals with David Freese winning over the Rangers. In 2012, we had the Giants sweeping the Detroit Tigers. In 2013, we had the Red Sox beating the Cardinals. First time in 95 years at that point, they had won the World Series in Fenway. They had won the other World Series on the road. 2014, the Giants beat the Kansas City Royals in 7 games. But that's okay for KC fans because the next year, they gentlemen swept the New York Mets. That is to date their last World Series championship. 2016, another formative one for me, one of the greatest World Series ever, no matter who won it. The Cubs beat the Indians in 7 games. First World Series title for the Cubs since 1908. Unbelievable. 2017, the Houston Astros beat the Dodgers in 7 games. In 2018, we had the Red Sox beating the Dodgers in 5 games, I believe. 2019, another great one for me. The Washington Nationals stunning everybody to beat the Astros in 7 games. There was no home win, by the way, in that series. All the wins for each team were on the road, which is really crazy. 2020, the shortened season, we had the Dodgers, as I misspelled it here, beating the Rays in 6 games over in Texas. In 2021, we had the Atlanta Braves beating the Astros. Then the Astros came back in 22 and beat the Philadelphia Phillies. In 23, I'm blanking on here for a second here, but I'm going to get back. The Texas Rangers won their first World Series title. And then last year, of course, the Dodgers beat the Yankees. So there you go. 2 minutes and 1 second to spare. I feel like I did a good job here. If you guys think so, I mean, feel free to comment below and like the video and subscribe and do whatever you can. Thank you so much.